Welcome back to my channel. My name is Phil A. Mignon, and this is medium rare poetry for kind people. And I can tell that you're a kind person just by the way you touched my like button several moments ago. So thank you. Today's poem celebrates the great Aussie spirit. An Australian, when faced with all manner of challenges, will use creativity and inventiveness to make every post a winner and come out on top. So I present to you A Man of the Land. A Man of the Land by Phil A. Mignon. Dave always dreamt of living as a man upon the land. Though born within the city, his existence there was bland. And then an opportunity arose one winter's day, an auction for a rural plot he saw upon display. He thought he'd take a gamble and attended the event. To learn the ropes on how to bid was merely his intent. The crowd was sparse. It seemed the lot was sitting on its own. In fact, it was so far remote, it had its own time zone. The lady with the gavel was as sharp as cheddar cheese, and knocked it down to Dave just when he raised his hand to sneeze. Bewildered but delighted, Dave was not inclined to falter. Besides, the price was super cheap. The place was underwater. At just a single dollar for each rustic flooded acre, $100,000 brought this gift right from his maker. He sold up all his assets and proceeded to the bush. His Ford would make the distance if a shove would come to push. A 5-day rugged journey found him landing at his gate. The sign proclaimed, "You've made it to the Easter Egg Estate." This greeting was intriguing, and in fact it seemed quite funny. He didn't know the ranch was fairly overrun with bunnies. The ground was mostly sodden from a month of teeming rain. He figured that with climate change it should turn dry again. His falcon slipped and slithered with a feeling of foreboding, but then he glimpsed the homestead fabricated from adobe. He figured this construction was in sync with Mother Earth. The insulating rating should be high, for all that's worth. But as he came much closer, his faint heart began to pound. The timbers of the building had transformed to termite mounds. Well, good for Dave. He'd had the nous to bring along a tent, equipped for outback living. Yes, it even had a vent. But where to raise his shelter and to lay his sweaty hat? For miles in all directions, the topography was flat. While scanning far horizons, he observed a distant hill, and so he aimed his wagon as this sure would fit the bill. He drove for several hours, and the favoured sight grew nigh. The monolith's protrusion nearly blotted out the sky. At last he made the incline, but then nearly filled his pants. The mountain was constructed by 1,000,000,000 fire ants. He noticed on the journey that he hadn't seen a cow, or camel, sheep, alpaca, nor a feral boar or sow. The brochure in the city had proclaimed a ranch that stocked a varied range of livestock, both in herds and even flocks. It seemed his land was teeming with insecticidal strays. You couldn't make a cracker from these critters, I would say. He couldn't find a tree to sit and ponder his position. The locust plague had wiped them out, a curse of superstition. But Dave was sure inventive, so he rolled up both his sleeves. These feral little critters must be fancied overseas. He ordered reams of cling wrap and then covered up the hill to steam the nasty bastards, then to harvest them at will. He also ordered chocolate. 'Twas delivered in a tanker. The lady driver pumped it out. For that he had to thank her. He plucked each ant within that hill with long-nosed plastic tweezers and dipped them in the chocolate and then popped them into freezers. He organised some packaging, all labelled Aussie Heats, and shipped them off to Asia as a fiery treat to eat. Immediate sensation. Northern neighbours wanted more. he shallow fried the termites, which were equally adored. A licorice locust lozenge was his next absurd creation, gobbled up in thousands over 27 nations. The sky was sure the limit as this gravy train he rode. He even sold a sauce derived by boiling young cane toads. Forget that old bush tucker with your wattle seeds and such. Our Dave had swamped the market with his insect Midas touch. His Easter egg estate became Australia's chocolate heart, but not an Easter bunny or a bilby did depart. For trucks of feral creatures who had trespassed on his plot were cooked and dipped and packaged, even some were piping hot. When Dave had made his fortune, he then sold the operation to clever Chinese businessmen and then went on vacation. The contract for the sale had neglected to declare that insects have intelligence that Dave would never share. And what was then the outcome? Did the newbies raise some foam? Our vengeful Aussie vermin ate them out of house and home. The view from David's penthouse is as fine as pure silk. He sips a brand new mocktail based on Cadbury's dairy milk. While sitting there relaxing, he observed a bogong moth. Could this then be the next big thing? A beauty bogong broth. So let's give it up for our hero, Dave. In the latter part of the poem, I made reference to the bogong moth. This is a very special moth that starts its life in the Darling Downs region of Queensland, and every year it migrates 1,000 kilometres to end up in the Bogong region of the Southern Alps of New South Wales, travelling by night, feeding on nectar to give them strength, and during the day they will rest in the sheltered sides of buildings in their tens of thousands. They've been known to plaster the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So they're a very special moth. So named Bogong by our First Nations people who used to feast on them. So that's it for today. If you could press the subscribe button, subscribe and join our tribe is what I like to say. And maybe like and share as well. That would help my channel enormously, and I'm very grateful. So you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.